And so now, we're gonna go to, passive solar opportunities. So we're gonna go, all this that we've done so far, we're just on the first rung. Okay, now, passive solar. And you have likely heard the saying, think outside of the box. Well, that's what we did when we looked here. That magnificent window and all the energy that could come in and so forth, when we first looked at the place, to maximize passive solar, the great room was built initially with a huge window on the south wall. It was 10 feet high, 8 feet across. But there it is at noon.
Oh. Oops.
Well, 20 years earlier, those pine trees were probably a lot less
Yeah.
promoting, but
Yeah.
other things happen too. Pine trees happen.
Right.
Yeah, and the pine trees,
Trees
so they're
grow.
still there in the winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so by 2008, 21 years after construction, it was buried under pine growth. And that's looking from the great room at all the stuff. And you'll see there's no garage, and everything's just overgrown and pushing. And as someone mentioned, pines keep their pine needles on. Not all of them. When we put the atrium in, and there's some pine trees leaning over those pine needles, like to stick to.
Yeah.
So anyway, 2010, again, thinking outside the box, we had to clean up the area. All the pine trees found a lovely home and was turned into for barns and stuff. Get through that. So here's before, and here's what you've seen now in a way of the difference. We have returned passive solar heating to the great facing room, and it's equivalent, again, I told you this computer programs, it's equivalent to 205 gallons of propane or 5,500 kilowatt hours of electricity per year of heating. And I could take my infrared gun and when the sun's out, just measure per square foot how much BTUs of energy was pouring in. Or in winter, open up the curtain and it's now a negative number showing me how many BTUs of energy is escaping, which would almost look like if I opened up a freezer door and pointed it at it. So anyhow, and it was confirmed, now I've got that over where he ran out of money before he could put the half round in.
Oh.
That's a wooden fan structure he had there. The payback was not good on putting in the window, but again, it'll give year after year, and it was getting to the original intent of what the owner wanted. So and like he had a half round here, so essentially, we did the calculations on how much it would save. It would save, but it was not going to pay off in a few years. But here's the amount of kilowatt hours based on east and north and south and so forth. So we figured out what it would be for the half round circle, and here they are putting it in. And I'll say they climbed, put it in, they took it out, they put it in, they took it out. They were trying to slowly fit in.
Yeah.
We were thinking, Cindy, remember?
I couldn't watch.
They got a lot
What
of
happened
exercise.
if they dropped that?
Was it worth it aesthetically?
Yeah.
I'll just ask Cindy that.
Yeah, I think aesthetically, yeah.
Yeah.
But also, lets more light in the winter and.
And so,
Yeah.
there's calculations on it. And we also, the windows over there were as bad as the ones in the porch, so we ended up, a lot of passive solar work here. And so, and there's the square footage on the windows and what we've done. And so, again, we're doing things to create, yes?
Yeah.
So in the winter time, is my understanding correct that you allow the sun to come in,
Yes,
Right,
and in the evening comes, you close the drapes.
correct.
yes.
Do you move the solar, like we were looking at your fans downstairs?
Yeah,
Do you move the warmth coming in during the day? Do you move it around?
yes, yeah, if it's sunny,
Yeah?
and if the atrium within a couple hours hits 90
Yeah.
degrees or thereabouts, that's when we start pumping heat into below and let it come up. And at the same time, we can open the front door and some windows here, and
Yeah.
we've got that coming in.
You don't use any fan to move some of that warmth coming?
Not into here, but we do
Yeah,
down in
I
the
know.
basement.
Well, we
So-
have a ceiling fan
Yeah.
That-
up
that'll-
here that kind of if there's
Yeah.
heat coming in the window, it circulates a
Yeah.
little bit, but
And we'll show some of that a little later.
Do you have a curtain at all that you ever put on?
not for that, no.
We do, I have a rod there,
He has a
and I have
makeshift
a,
one, yeah.
because if there's a presentation here, like 3 or 4 in the afternoon and the sun is there,
Yeah.
I can put a blackout, on there to.
But we really don't generally cover it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now the question is the east. What do we do with the east? Here's the laundry room area and stuff here again, and, we did this insulation. I mentioned earlier how sometimes you have to think outside of the box. Well, and here's that exterior wall again. Other times you have to just think about breaking out of the box. Cindy knew Twig, a friend of ours in Carpenter, was working with me, so she wasn't too worried that I was getting us into trouble, because I was gonna punch a hole. And so, you know, it cost $300. Look,
Oh.
oh, there we go. It cost $300 to cut that out. Now that we got a hole in a basement wall, what do we do with it? Among other things, we had to put up a barrier so frogs, mice and stuff don't come in now. But snakes. So there's the door I mentioned to people earlier who saw it. So this door, would this door open to a new passive solar energy savings opportunities and lifestyle experiences, or a huge financial boondoggle complete with its own money pit? So that's where we were then. Now this is looking from the money pit area to the other ones. The Airbnb suite, the wood stove laundry room area, then we're out beyond. Utility room underneath the atrium, and a 7th exit door to the north, 7th outside door. One immediate benefit, we're able to move all the noisy equipment out of the laundry room area, so the Airbnb people
The radon.
radon and so forth. Now, this idea of putting a hole in the wall and making an opening, it just didn't hit me one day. There was stuff I read as early as 2007 about a poor man's solar system. And I like that idea. I just wanted to take it one step further. I want to be able to grow stuff in there too. So, and that's what we've tried to accomplish. And I'm gonna pass through some of this. This is just indicating that, one thing I wanna point out here, and this is why I call it a poor man's solar system, is when the sun shines, for the amount of sunlight I captured, like in a car, the greenhouse effect of that, it's equivalent to about 90 kilowatt hours of electricity I'm catching per hour when the sun shines. I went into the solar panel stuff. If I wanted solar panels to generate 90 kilowatt hours of electricity for me, how much would that cost? $225,000. Windmills, $500,000. Because remember, the efficiency of windmills and stuff too, 6 to 12 hours. My entire cost on the atrium greenhouse was $65,000. Part of the passive solar number I gave you those in the we'll get through, we'll pass through this. That's more for, engineering people on, stuff. So, you've heard that saying, if you find yourself in a, Will Rogers said, if you find yourself in a hole, the first thing to do is stop digging. As Cindy knows, I'm weird and I've always been a contrarian. I'm continually attempting to dig deeper for reasonable energy savings opportunities. And so, this is what it looked outside the front door for.
Oh my gosh.
We dug right down to the footers, and remember that how it sloped.
Right.
And I only had so much property going out before a long drop off. Well, we took all that dirt and pushed it over, so I still have a room for a garden and so forth. But this is what we did. We dug down below the frost line, tied in the atrium and so forth. Here's a certain stage of it, and you'll note, even though it's away from the cabin, I'm heavily insulating even the outside walls, even though the walls are 10 to 12 inches thick. What can I do to put that dome around the cabin to where I'm not impacted if it's global warming or global cooling? And so here's a breakdown of the different levels. We poured 80 tons of concrete in and tied it into the other concrete, so that's where the heat can be soaked up into the concrete. And again, you know, notice the heavy insulation on the outside. One thing I wish I had caught them before they cut it. I would have liked the insulation come all the way up here, and I would have encased it somehow. They wanted to look pretty, so they. Okay. I'll go with it. And so again, like a thermos bottle, this thing here, having that air insulation, so my ice and water is still cold. And so here's, and again, because of the documentation we do, April 25th when we started, October 20th, 2018, we got our first plants in there. Here's the original look. That porch or deck you see there is now down at the lake. That's what parents can sit on and watch their kids play in the water. This is my scratch work of what I was thinking of doing with Mike Francis's help, the carpenter. And this is what it ended up being. Now notice the great room is 128 square feet, and all the energy we get from it. Well now, with the passive solar, the roof is 1,000 square feet. The front is 166 and 140 on the side there. So I've got all this passive solar coming in. And so this is just, and again, you can do the computer calculations on the glass and so forth, which is it through this. There's the oranges against the background of the winter. South atrium, and again, and we set up, as I mentioned to Arthur, how we have these little fans that blow the air upwards underneath the roofing, so it triggers avalanches on the main metal roof, so it kind of wipes the roofing clear after snowstorms. Now, if it's going to be really cold and frigid, I won't run those fans because I'll just let it freeze up there, because then the snow acts as an insulator against the -10, -20 temperatures. So that's the shielding we did in front.
What you got left? Done it all.
Now we've gone through the first 2 rungs. So these are gonna get shorter now, because I'm gonna do a click.